Hello, everybody. This is Joseph P. Farrell with news and views from the Nefarium on Thursday, October 10th, 2024, in the midst of the hurricane ravaged southeastern United States. I don't have much news to report on that score. I do have some relatives that live in Florida, and from what I have heard, one of these relatives is actually what is called a first responder nowadays. Apparently, they have called him in. I don't know. I heard this kind of indirectly through the family grapevine, so I don't know uh, who did the calling in. If it was the state government, if it was the federal government, if it was simply a company. I don't know at this point. My relatives tend to live in the central part of the state, so that's all I know at present. They did say that basically all they had where they lived was a bunch of high winds and lots of rain. I hope it remains confined to that after what we saw happen in Georgia and the Carolinas and eastern Tennessee with Hurricane Helene. So prayers anyway for all those people. On the housekeeping front, don't forget we do not have a vid chat tomorrow. I do have on Saturday that special appearance at Walter Bosley's NIMSA conference, which I hope goes forward smoothly. I'm wrestling with some internet issues lately, so I'm hoping that all goes forward smoothly. So today's report is, I have to admit, when I read this report, I kind of chuckled. And the reason I chuckled is because people like Catherine Austin Fitts, whom I'm sure many of you have listened to, and I and others have been warning for years that there is no such thing as a secure cyber system, that all cyber systems can be and have been penetrated at some point, co-opted as it were. And in addition to that, Catherine Fitts has also argued that one of the favorite methods that people in positions of power use is to stack several functions or objectives of a particular operation into one operation. So, in other words, to give a somewhat gruesome example, if you're concerned about losing an election and acquiring lithium mine rights and so on and so forth, hold a hurricane and have it hit North Carolina and South Carolina. That's basically the type of thinking going on. And I've argued much the same thing in my 9/11 book, that you had basically not only stacked operations, but that some of these operations were not being conducted by the same people. In other words, stacked functions or stacked operations open up the possibility for something else. And that's called piggybacking. In other words, one group does an operation and another group has infiltrated that operation and bends and twists it for their own purposes, unbeknownst to the first group. Okay? So I read this article and I had to laugh because with all of the grotesque growth of the surveillance state, thank you, Shrub family, in the wake of 9/11, and all the usage and misuse of that state since then, thank you, planned scamdemic. We have this story, and I hope you're paying attention because this story is a bit of the proof of the pudding that the stacked functions are perhaps being exploited by parties not privy to the original planning committee. Okay? This article's titled Reports China Hacked Verizon and AT&T and May Have Accessed U.S. Wiretap Systems. This is dated just 3 days ago. It's an article by John Brodkin, which I will link for you. I want to read the first 4 paragraphs and then another paragraph of this article, and then conclude with why I'm more than a little concerned about this. So here we go. Quote, Chinese government hackers penetrated the networks of several large U.S.-based internet service providers and may have gained access to systems used for court-authorized wiretaps of communications networks. The Wall Street Journal reported Saturday. Quote, people familiar with the matter told the Wall Street Journal that hackers breached the networks of companies including Verizon, AT&T, and Lumen, also known as CenturyLink. Quote, a cyber attack tied to the Chinese government penetrated the networks of a swath of U.S. broadband providers, potentially accessing information from systems the federal government uses for court-authorized network wiretapping requests, unquote, the Wall Street Journal wrote. Quote, for months or longer, the hackers might have held access to network infrastructure used to cooperate with lawful U.S. requests for communications data, according to people familiar with the matter, unquote. These, quote, attackers also had access to other tranches of more generic internet traffic, unquote, according to the Wall Street Journal sources. The attack is being attributed to a Chinese hacking group called Salt Typhoon. The Washington Post reported on the hacking campaign yesterday, describing it as, quote, an audacious espionage operation, pardon me, likely aimed in part at discovering the Chinese targets of American surveillance, unquote. The Post report attributed the information to U.S. government officials and said an investigation by the FBI, other intelligence agencies, and the Department of Homeland Security is in its earliest stages. Oh, I feel so much better now that the FBI is on the job. Anyway, one more paragraph here, folks. Quote, hackers apparently exfiltrated some data from Verizon networks by reconfiguring Cisco routers, said one current and former U.S. official familiar with the matter, unquote, according to the Washington Post. Quote, the fact that they were able to make changes in the routers without detection reflects the sophistication of the adversary, but raises questions about Verizon's security posture, analysts said, unquote. Now, I have to wonder, I really do. I'm not a technical person, as many of you know, but I do have to wonder if within these routers that we all have in our homes to some degree, I have to wonder if the old 1980s cyber scenario of the NSA Clipper chip was being put into these machines, allowing this remote takeover and control. I don't know, but I suspect some scenario like that may be in play. But the real bottom line here for me is that you have a piggybacked operation at all. And that should give everybody pause, because we have been insured and told over and over that this is all for our security, and yet they can't keep these networks secure from foreign hackers. Now, rest assured, China's not the only country out there with dedicated intelligence assets that are purposed to hacking other foreign countries and corporations' cyber networks. So cyber espionage is off the chart. And as a result of this, so are piggybacking operations. So, in other words, it's now, I think, much easier than it used to be, not only to piggyback operations, espionage, to let someone else steal the data for you and then steal it from them because you've piggybacked into their operation. So, in other words, we could have a real security mess on our hands with virtually no privacy whatsoever. Don't be surprised if your personal data shows up on a Chinese website, or a Russian one, or an Iranian, or an Israeli, what have you. It's going to get out of hand, and I suspect that there will be a response to it. And here comes the curveball, folks. the response is probably going to come in the form of some sort of global treaty or regulation agency and so on and so forth. In other words, they're going to piggyback yet another objective on top of all of this. And if you've been following what's coming out of the Disunited Nations lately, they're already hard at work on all of this stuff. So anyway, I had a chuckle at this. All the scramble for Patriot Act and enhanced powers in the wake of 9/11 has led to this. We're simply making it much easier, in my opinion, for foreign countries, and for that matter, corporations, to sneak into these networks and spy. And maybe we'll wake up and realize that central bank digital currency in the wake of this story may not be such a good thing. That's it for today's news and views from the Nefarium. Keep posted and keep me posted, please, if you hear anything more about these hurricanes, and I will try and do my best to do the same for you. That's it. Remember, there's no vid chat tomorrow. I do have an appearance, hopefully, that will go smoothly at Walter Bosley's NIMSACon conference. So we'll see you on the flip side, everybody. Bye-bye, and God bless.